very excited to introduce everybody to somebody who I met through my workplace. We don't work together, but our organizations have done some things together. I work in a law firm, and some of the folks in the law firm encountered a group called EduFuturo that Mariana Bulgarovich is a part of. She's a volunteer coordinator there. And I first met her when she was coordinating me as a volunteer at one of their bigger events. My wife and I both were there, and we just thought that the group does an amazing job providing support to families in our area, and their focus is on education. And the reason that I thought that it would be great to hear from her as we read this book is that in chapter 9 and later in chapter 11, Joseph Stiglitz discusses education as a key component to achieving greater equitability in our country. And he notes that our current education system itself, like so many aspects of society, favors those who benefited from the receipt of wealth from previous generations. So if you're in one of those situations where you're not necessarily benefiting from the wealth or the influence or the knowledge of a previous generation, if it hasn't developed for whatever reason, you're not starting at the same point as everybody else. And that is a key component of what he's been talking about in this book in terms of inequities. Just a couple of facts. Just in 2018, the US Department of Education did a study that found that children of college-educated parents are much more likely to pursue any type of higher education. They're more likely to pursue a 4-year degree than a 2-year degree, more likely to attend a private college, and they're more likely to just complete an undergraduate degree. And the statistics are pretty stark there. So we thought it would be good to have a guest speaker who would help us focus on some of this. Mariana comes to us. Yes, she's originally from Argentina. I'll let her tell a little bit more about her personal story, but she's been in the country for, I think she said 15 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, with 8 years as an independent consultant, and most recently working on the volunteer issues for EduFuturo. She leads a team of people to empower high school students and their families to get access to better education and resources. And she's got a Master of Science from George Mason University, and her undergraduate degree is a BA in Business Administration from the University of Buenos Aires. So I'm going to ask Wes to show a little clip about EduFuturo, and then we're going to get into a discussion where we ask Mariana to talk a little bit about what she does, have a few questions, and then have everybody else jump in.
And I forgot to click share sound, so that's why it went away. All right, here we go.
EduFuturo is an organization that is changing the lives of people. We are an organization where once the families go through our programs, we have impact. And how we measure that is by having a family of 4 that are not making more than $40,000 a year, but then after they have gone through our programs, 6 years later, they are making close to $100,000.
We help develop immigrant youth's leadership skills. We give them STEM skills. We teach them how to do their resume, how to apply for loans, how to do a number of things so that they can pursue higher education and make their career dreams come true. We also work with the families to solidify the household so that the family can thrive. And when the family thrives, the kids can thrive. And hopefully, as we all hope here, as immigrants, we hope that the next generation will have more opportunities.
My name is Eric Playtaz. I'm a junior at the George Washington University, where I study finance with a minor in statistics. I am the son of 2 immigrant parents from El Salvador. I was born and raised in Burke, Virginia, where I currently have been residing for the past few years, and now I currently live in Washington, D.C. Back in high school, I was actually part of Emerging Leaders 1, where I had the opportunity to work with a mentor directly. I came from a family where college wasn't necessarily talked about. It was always maybe going to community college. After joining Ed Futuro 1, I was able to speak directly with my mentor. He was able to guide me, provide me resources, show me how common application was, and I was able to apply to four-year universities and eventually get into one. And I believe it was through Ed Futuro 1 that I was able to secure a position at a top university and attend on full ride.
At EduFuturo, we have a very interesting approach where we are not only working with the youth, but we're also working with the parents. So this is a two-generation approach that we have, and we work at the same time that we're working with the students, we're working with the parents. We make sure that the family is a family that is well adjusted, that they are making salaries that will allow them to increase their socioeconomic status. And for the youth, we work with them to make sure that they are successful and they graduate in high school on time, that they go to college, and at college that they find internships and finally their first professional job that will allow them to get out of the situation where they are living in a cycle of poverty.
Bueno, yo participé en Padres Comprometidos y lo que más me ayudó esa clase fue a buscar, ¿no?, las herramientas para poder ayudar a mi hija. Ahora sí ya me involucré para poder ver las notas de mi hija, o sea, aprendí todas esas cosas, hacer cita con los consejeros, con la madre enlace del colegio para que me ayuden con eso. Eso es lo que yo más he aprendido ahora y también a tener más empatía con mis hijos.
I really enjoy the fact that me and my mom.
All right, I got the message to stop there. So Jamel, take it
Yeah.
away.
So, I sent a message around to a couple of folks just saying at a time when we're dealing with some bad news globally, it's nice to see good news and people succeeding. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Mariana to give a little bit of an introduction to herself and talk a little bit about EduFuturo. And then, Wes and I are going to ask her some questions, and then we'll open it up for others as well.
Thank you so much, Emal, for this idea, for inviting me, Wes, for putting together this book club that I'm thinking maybe I should belong to. I'm really not a good reader, and definitely a group like this will help me be more consistent with and disciplined with reading books and informing myself about these things and others. As Jamal said, I've been here for the past 17 years, but it's been really when I found EduFuturo that I found like a family where we are all immigrants, and most of us are bilingual Spanish and English speakers. In one way or the other, we've been, in my case, I have a son that is in middle school, and it doesn't matter how high your education level is or your English level is, which is some of the things that our families don't have. But on top of that, we come from a different culture, a different country where the education system is just different. And it's not until you get someone who comes to you and tells you, these are your resources, you should speak. Did you know that there's a school counselor or a psychologist in the school, or there are resources in the school, right? You don't know what you don't know. And as I said, even for me, being from a well-educated background, with college education and all of that, I still didn't know a lot of the things that I now know because I work for EduFuturo. So, questions. I'm open for questions.
I was going to start with, and then Wes, I'll let you jump in. So, folks, you would have seen that Jorge talks about, he's the founder of EduFuturo, talks about the two-generation approach. And to me, I find that really intriguing because um, if you're just focusing on the youth and you don't help develop some support within their families, you don't know what you're going to get. And I think that their success rate is higher. Can you talk a little bit about that, Mariana? And we saw a mother talking, and we just talk a little bit about that, and how important it is in terms of breaking a cycle and actually creating social mobility.
Yeah, sure. So basically, there are different programs that we have to actually tackle that, if you will. So on one side of it, we have the power empowerment services. So there's a couple of workshops that are developed in EduFuturo that are empowering the parents to learn how to be more engaged about grades at school of their kids, how to use best their resources, and so on and so forth. So that's one side of it. The other that emerged actually after the pandemic is the case management team, where Jorge Figueredo is the executive director, and he's the one looking always for grants and ways to support these families in terms of rental assistance, any financial assistance, or even with education, with having a better cover letter, a better resume, to have the chance to get a better job and to have more time to devote to their students, to their kids. Usually it's not the lack of engagement or the lack of wanting to be with them. It's many times they just don't have the time or the knowledge or both. So with those programs, that's what we're trying to do. It's not only focusing on the student and supporting the student build confidence and believe in themselves and do some career exploration, but also helping the parents understand they need them and they need their support, whether they've been here in the country before or not, or whether they haven't been college before. So many of these are underserved immigrants who haven't been, their families or the parents haven't been to college before. So that's exactly how we do it. So there's different programs we have, and there's also a partnership with the Fairfax County Public Schools that is in the renewal of the third year, which is actually literally talking to the families of those students who are falling behind with bad grades or with low attendance. And so what this team people do is go and, first of all, it's in connection with the Fairfax council, with the school counselor, or the SOSA, which is the System of Support Advisor, who has already a wellness team where they support the child. But we are kind of experts in the specifically Hispanic community, but we serve 67 nationalities. But obviously it helps with the Spanish when we communicate with parents that only speak Spanish. And so that's what we do. We visit the families, we visit their homes and see what's happening at home, where is that they need support. And it's either we put them in contact with someone in our team, or if we don't have it, we put them in contact with someone in a different organization so that they can thrive, they can get on their feet, and they can support their children and see how the importance of them educating themselves, and not just be like, work now, I'm earning money, or I flipping hamburgers for the rest of my life. Like, we want them to achieve more.
Appreciate that. And I think it's a good segue into what my next question was. And Annette, I saw your question in the chat, and my question kind of correlates to that. And so you kind of talked about your partnerships and whatnot. And in our last reading, in the last chapter, Stiglitz mentions a well-functioning society requires a balance between individual and collective action. And so when it comes to work that you do, the experiences of immigrant families, and in terms of education, how do you see that balance between individual action and collective action, and maybe what's missing in American society when it comes to education and for our immigrant families?
I feel it's awareness, education is literally that education for everyone. It's not just it's literally everyone. Is us. What we're doing now today is getting informed about the resources, what is out there, and what the struggles are of these families. And I keep learning things. I mean, I don't have the real, the answer, but I do think I do love the idea that more and more people like you all and people through my role as a volunteer coordinator now, that they understand and they believe in our mission and they want to support it one way or the other. So whether it's, partnering, donating money for scholarships that we provide to the students, or supporting us as Jamal was doing that on July 15th. It was our largest event. It was a summer where we present to all of our students and all of our families with all the programs that we provide throughout the year. And it was a very well attended and very good event where people came out inspired and everybody, right? Not the parents, not the students, but also the volunteers, our volunteers. And that inspires me.
Hmm. And how on, so you Edufuturo relies heavily on individuals, and you kind of mentioned the partnership with the school. Could you just expand on how important that collective interaction and engagement with, whether it's a school or the local government, or if there would be, love that collective action with the national government, where do you see that falling in line with your work and just education as a whole for, immigrant families?
I mean, I think obviously this is something Jorge would be better suited to respond because he's the one getting all the funds. However, for what I can say and tell is there's a lot of work that goes behind getting behind a grant. So for instance, with the public schools, it was not from the night to the following day that happened. It's a process, and every year we have to prove ourselves what we're doing, showing numbers and sharing the value what we're doing and the impact we're adding. And it takes a lot of work and time. I think the biggest challenge for our organization as a nonprofit is maybe because of the size or because of Jorge would say there's a percentage that can be invested when you have grants. You have lots of regulations and requirements, and so there's a lot of less investment in the operationality or the operational aspect of the organization, where there's a lot of rotation as a consequence, because it's hard to keep good talent in place, building up the organization. So that's kind of the other challenge that apparently nonprofits have. And this I'm talking based on what I've heard him saying, not necessarily what I do, because again, I'm not in the fundraising or grant, but I know this is how we get our sources. It's not, some are individual donors, and those are unrestricted funds. So we can definitely use it how it's best for the organization. But then there's others that we need to comply with certain things. AmeriCorps program, we hire our facilitators through that program. It's a federal program. And we have others that pay the salaries. And sometimes it's a creative act or balancing act of having a piece of here and piece of there just to put together a salary. I've been lucky enough to have an organization like Clifford Chance sponsor my role. So it's one, it comes from one venue, but some of my coworkers, they have the sources come from different venues, different grants, and so on and so forth.
Awesome. Thank you so
I'll
much.
jump in. One of the things that I noticed, and you talk about this just in terms of the information, is that I've been very impressed by the way you guys show your data, show the metrics, show the impact. I mean, the stories are fantastic and they have a lot of emotion behind them, but you also have the numbers. And for folks who remember the last book that we read, Stephen Phillips, he is talking about, you know, for progressive organizations, they have to do the work. You know, they should be demanding from party politics, or you show how you're using the money that you get, show the value of it. And I've been very impressed by the way that you guys do that. But it just kind of ties in. It's not easy, but you guys have the data that says, okay, when we put time and money into this, these are all the ways in which it pays off as an investment for the future, which I think gets into that quote from the beginning of tonight. You know, that you know, if we don't invest in people, it's a waste of talent.
Agree. Thank you, Jamal, for that.
Take
Yeah,
it with the next one.
sure. So I had a question, because you came from you know, Argentina. You went to the University of Buenos Aires, which I understand is free. You know, how do you know, our education is so expensive here, and I know that there's private education and public education in Argentina. One of the things that comes up in the book is that if we had more access to free education here, we could, if we didn't have such crushing debt that keeps people out of schools, despite the fact that you guys are working to help people figure out how to get the resources. From your experience in Argentina, did the fact that the higher education free, was that an equalizer in the society? You know, that's kind of what our author is saying here, that to a certain extent it can provide greater social mobility. Maybe it's not. You know, what do you think about that, and how, because
Sure.
you've seen both systems?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I do think, I mean, and one example for me that I still don't understand is like the first 5 years of life for any kid when they're developing is the most expensive for any parent to support and give them education, right? So here, right? So you either have money and you send them to a good private school, or you send them to someone's relatives to take care of them because you're working to full-time jobs, for instance. In terms of the education in the university, now moving further up, I think it was great to be able to go to an institution with excellent education. There has to be a balance, though. I feel like because it is completely free, and this is just my opinion, and maybe I'm biased with what my mom would say in the past. It's like, if only, you know, they would charge a little bit, people wouldn't be so lightly taking so lightly education and going in and out, like, you know, because it's free. And that happened in many occasions. Some students were very focused and they did their career in like the 4 or 5 years they had to do it. And some, like me, sometimes I was like, do I want to be an accountant? Do I want to? And so it was the fact that it was free made it maybe less for me to be committed, if you will. I'm not sure if that was the reason, but I would say that it is an equalizer. It should be free, completely free for those who really cannot afford it, and it should be paid for those who can. Not as expensive as it is here, and the same goes with the health system, but that's a different topic.
That's another topic in the book as well. Other questions for Mariana? I see somebody wanting to know a little bit more about like how big is the staff and how many volunteers, and are there teachers on the staff?
Sure. So our program director is a teacher by trade, and I think maybe some of them have studied like psychology and are along those lines, but we all care about the mission and empowering these families to. I think there's many of them also that came for one reason or another. They don't have necessarily all the the same the same rights, if you will, that all the people who have been born here and or have their families here. So we have to deal with having our family abroad and not and having to fund ourselves, if you will, for we're starting here. We're new. We're immigrants, right? And then the other question that you said was how many people. We're around 40 people now, and that includes the AmeriCorps. So the AmeriCorps are around 12, if I'm not wrong, right now. Many of them have returned from last year, so they serve for a year. They can extend it for another year, and so we're really proud that many of them stayed, and we have 3 new hires. And they do the facilitation of the leadership development programs for the youth at the schools. And so we work at different schools, it's 7 or 8 schools, depending on the season. And we have relationships with the family liaison or with the principals at the school or counselors. And we kind of determine a date where we can provide our workshops or our programs. And that's where both for parents and for kids. And it's usually in the evenings. And then the volunteers, they rotate, but last year we had 259, and I think right now we have already like 180 so far. So we are expanding our capacity, and with the support of volunteers, there's so much more that you can do, because you can also, with the programs that we have, for example, with the ELP, Emerging Leaders Program for the high school students, they get the AmeriCorps who facilitate the sessions, and that's okay. But then with the volunteers, with experience who were, have been through the education system here in the US, they can support like a small crew of individuals as mentors. And that's something that is key that I didn't have in my country. And I think it's great that people talk so much and encourage that to happen, to have mentorships. That's so important. I yet need to find someone who is my very good mentor. But I can see the value, and I've seen the testimonials, and I've heard people say that, and how much it made a difference in their lives because of that guidance. So
Hey, we're gonna have you turn your mic on.
Thanks, Wes. Mariana, if I can ask you to switch your mind back to when you were talking about education and affordability of college in Argentina. My question is, has it been evident in Argentina that because of the financial ease that people can go to college in Argentina, that it makes them more focused on reaching their career goals, or does it kind of not really have any effect because it doesn't really matter, I can go at any time?
oh my gosh, you're putting me on a very hard spot, and this is being recorded. So again, this is only and solely my opinion.
Right. I understand that.
Yeah. I think there should be a balance, and it's so hard to talk about Argentina right now. if the government would use their resources wisely, let's put it that way, and wouldn't steal money from the constituents, that would be helpful. So, the education being free is really opening doors for those who wouldn't otherwise be able to attend the university, right? So that certainly is a plus. Now, if the people are really using that right now, it's hard to tell. I mean, I've been away for a while already from Argentina, and I know the situation is not quite good right now, economically, in many ways, like in the social status of people, like people just, I mean, I would get into a terrain that I don't even know how to explain, but it's pretty much, there's been a lot of giving resources more, almost to the point that emphasizing or how would I say this, feeding the desire of people not to work because they have social plans that can support them. So there has to be a balance, right? So it has to be, we're going to support those who really want to study, and we maybe kick them out if, you know, they're a year here, they haven't added any value or they haven't used the resources well. So I think it's all about using resources well. Yeah, and I leave it at that.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then Annette had some questions related to how many children and age ranges of the youth that you serve, and what does that look like for, you know, single parent family households? And they're
So how many children? It depends. There's usually what we serve is the low, very low, and extremely low population. Sorry, my daughter is here. Give me 1 second.
no worries.
Oh, you're still on mute.
Okay, so I was trying to unmute. You were trying to mute me, and I was trying to unmute myself. So anyways, she was trying to ask me to please come with me to bed. So I'm sorry about that. I lost my train of thought.
Just the age ranges of the youth you serve, and what does it look like, experiences for those who come from single parent households?
Right. So the age range is usually from middle school, upper elementary, fourth grade. I mean, yeah, 4th to 5th grade and up. So we have programs for robotics and PELP, which is social emotional learning for the middle school students. And yeah, and to help them in the transition through the hormonal changes and all of that to go to high school, and the education system, which is so different from middle to high school. And then high school, we serve all the way from 9th through 12th grade. And after that, the 1st and 2nd year of college. So once they go to college, there is a group, you can get support from us also for mentor 101 to hold your hand while you go through college, because the experiences also can be really different and difficult. In terms of the family, again, I was saying that we serve low, extremely low, and very low income-based families, and that means usually, as Jorge mentioned in the video, we might be talking about a household of 4 people for about less than 50,000 that they make, right? So that's really something. And whether they are, you know, single parents or not. Sometimes they're not single parents, sometimes they are, but regardless, they struggle financially and make meets N. N meets N.
I have one more question, and I know Wes, we probably want to be mindful of Mariana's time. And I see that Susan has asked a question, that's pretty local here in Virginia. We can follow up in that offline, Susan, and get you in touch with Mariana. But you guys are in one area here. Obviously, it's a great idea. Oh, you're 4 areas? Well,
we're based in Arlington and Fairfax County, but we are
right.
also in the Prince Williams and now city of
Yeah.
Alexandria. So,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
yeah, it's
So,
Northern
but-
Virginia. It's one area.
Northern Virginia. Is there a network of organizations like yours across the country? Some that might be dealing with immigrant communities in other parts of the United States, or even non-immigrant communities, where people have needs. Are you guys part of a broader movement to do this type of 2-generational intervention with respect to education? And can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, we are affiliated with Unidos USA, US, and they do have different affiliates, different organizations throughout the country. Actually, I myself look for who was in Georgia through their website because I have a nephew who was in need of some support himself. So yeah, it's called Unidos US. And then there's other sponsors, but I wouldn't be able to tell you all. But that, responding to your question, that's the one main umbrella organization.
Okay, that's good. And we sometimes talk about how you get a movement to keep going. So I hope people will look at the website and think about it. You've got people from different parts of the United States here in different walks of life. So are there other questions from folks?
I would like to add to that. I mean, if anything, what gets it going or the wheel going is really the passion of people trying to support other people. And definitely, if I will have to say, I kind of make a joke of this, but the executive director works so hard and believes so much in this mission. Like he would be, if I could count his hours, he would be my top volunteer. He puts on so many hours. So anyways.
Yeah, if you guys have a chance to, if you go to the website, you can see some other links to testimonials, and you'll see the director Jorge, who is, like Mariana, very impressive group of people. Chapter 4, we had chapter 8 on restoring democracy, and chapter 9 on restoring a dynamic economy with jobs and opportunity for all. And he touches on a couple of themes, a few themes in each of these chapters. In the first one, restoring democracy, basically it is how do we make sure that we maintain a democracy, with the attacks on voting rights, where we've shifted potentially from one person, one vote to essentially $1, one vote. And it's actually, not, I mean, the more dollars you have, the bigger voice you have. He says that we need to somehow reduce the influence of money in politics, and he has some specific ideas, with respect to that. But he gets into a discussion of some of the key court cases that have made it possible for moneyed interests to have basically have a $1 one vote system. And he talks about how he talks about some of our institutions, including the Supreme Court, now being dominated to a certain extent by the fact that moneyed interests have really worked to get conservative folks onto the court, and how that's affected some of the decisions. With respect to restoring a dynamic economy with jobs for all, he basically says, that we have, we really need to, we can't do this in just little ways. We do have to think big, and we have to change our politics, and we have to become more progressive. And so he provides some ideas, specific ideas in there, which we have included, I think, in the appendix to the Reader's Guide, about a progressive political agenda, a progressive economic agenda, and the whole building of political alliances. And then he talks a lot about creation of a movement at the end, and in the final discussion of the second chapter. And he leaves us kind of with this thought: current arrangements, a movement could be based on the fact that people are fed up with the fact that current arrangements are unfair, leaving some groups behind and ignoring some important dimensions of well-being. Family life, work-life balance, the environment. Some of these things that he's pointed out before, that the market are a purely market-based economy does not address. So those are some of the general themes there. Robin has done a fantastic job putting together a whole bunch of additional resources and some things to talk about. But I agree, Wes, these were some great, these were chapters that appealed to me as well. And as I said, I saw some of that discussion of education, thought it would be great to have Mariana participate. And as we get into the discussion, we might be able to talk about some of the specific things that he raises that are mentioned in the Reader's Guide.
Yes, thank you, Jamel, and shout out to Robin for being the creator of our guides that you all get to access. So let's kick it off with question number 1. Are there any specific voter reforms that have had an impact, positive and or negative, on your ability to vote and or other members of your community and network? And Robin. And then Annette.
Yeah, some of the closing of polling locations really impacted my community, and it was very obvious that it was gerrymandered along racial lines. My friend and I live literally 10 minutes apart, but my district, I could go in and out in a matter of minutes, leave my home, vote, and be back within a half hour. And my friend who lived across the line where the district becomes more heavily populated with Black constituents, her wait was several hours. I forget how long exactly she told me she waited in line to vote, but it was hours on end.
Thank you for sharing, Robin. Annette.
In Pennsylvania, as a result of the pandemic, for the first time, they allowed mail-in voting. And I don't know if you remember this in the 2020 election. One of the dumb things that, in my opinion, that Pennsylvania does is that you can't count any of the mail-in voting until after the voting places are closed. So in 2016, it looked like Trump was winning, but then when the mail-in votes, came in, Biden did take our state, but it caused a lot of ruckus and a lot of people saying that mail-in voting isn't safe and blah blah blah, this and that. They have tried to take mail-in voting away, but so far so good. We can still mail in our ballots. So I hope it stays this way. And also, I do know that North Carolina is horribly gerrymandered, and Pennsylvania has also been horribly gerrymandered, but that has changed. Not that it can't change back very easily, but we're one of those purple states that they always talk about, and so I just hope that we can keep our better districts and keep in our voting, our mail-in balloting.
Yes, and in the chat we had two individuals, Peg and Monica, mention how mail-in voting has been very beneficial. I will say for me personally, I never had any experience, but Nebraska just initiated voter ID. And so next year, and I'm a precinct in charge of my precinct. And
Wow.
so it'd be really interesting to see how that affects my community and other communities, because we know the research, we know the experiences of how that disproportionately affects Black and Brown communities and lower income communities, particularly in the rural areas, as the one thing that I have heard being the most critical thing is the access to the DMV, because that's the easiest place to get a driver's license. So I know that was the biggest thing being talked about, that connects to what Robin had said. Beulah and then Patricia.
Here in Tennessee, we experienced the whitewashing, you want to call it, or whatever you want to call it in here, where that the census, we talked about this a great deal last night, that we need to already get started for the census for 2030 because of the change of the demographics or the population of people here in the United States. But somehow they were able to break. Nashville, Davidson County was one district, and Mr. Cooper, Representative Cooper, was the person who had been in there forever and a day, and he was a Democrat. But whenever due to the census, they broke Davidson County up into 3 districts, and all 3 of the districts were were Republican. And so Mr. Cooper decided he wasn't going to run for re-election because he knew it was probability that he would not win the way that they had broken up Metro Nashville, Davidson County. Now they are after Memphis with the population of folks in Nashville's #1 and Memphis is #2, where it used to be Memphis was #1 and Nashville's #2 as far as population as it relates to minorities. So that's an interesting thing. And in addition to that, something that I noted at election time was the removal by our Postmaster General of the not voting machines, but the sorting machines at the post offices. They have not been able to put all those sorting machines back into place in order for the mail-in ballots to be sorted quickly, as well as I have just begun to see them bring back the curbside mail places where you can drop your mail in. And I said, I know that this this is going to affect some people who may have disabilities, older people that could just drive up and drop their ballots into the mailbox. That was taken away. So I'm figuring that by 2024, that's probably be taken away again in November of 2024.
Yeah, and I believe I remember that, the drive-by curbside mailboxes being an issue in Texas as well, particularly the county Houston is in. So thank you, Beulah. Appreciate it. Patricia.
Hi, how are you? I'm going to piggyback on what Beulah said about the mail-in voting. I retired from the Postal Service, so I know what happens when people send in their ballots. And oftentimes, it's not taken seriously by management of the Postal Service for one reason or another. I think there should be a higher system of checks and balances throughout the government, which should trickle down also to the lower regions of the government, such as the post office, and things like that should be taken seriously, and it's not. A lot of ballots were not counted. It wasn't done efficiently, and I've been in, after 32 years of seeing this year in and year out, I can say I'm an expert at it, and I know what I've seen, and I know what's done with those ballots in the Postal Service. So I think they need a better system of checks and balances throughout the government. And I think the people that are in higher positions in the government should be, I think they should be held to a higher standard. I don't think just anybody should be in the position in the post office that doesn't, think that it's important that that mail, not just particularly that mail, but all the mail gets to where it's supposed to go in a timely fashion. Thank you, Beulah.
Yeah, and I think, we talked
He talked about that in the book. He said maintaining effective checks and balances,
and
ensuring the fairness in voting.
And we've talked a lot about, it's been talked in progressive circles of the current postmaster DeJoy and whether he should be in charge or not. And so,
who put him in the position?
Well, the last president, who will not be named. Appreciate it, Patricia. Let's go to Jamel.
Thank you.
Patricia, great. Did you have any special training? Would like during election period, did people in the post office, was there, when you say they didn't, I mean, they just didn't take it seriously, but did they not even say, well, we're gonna, I don't know, you have a holiday rush, you got to deal with, you've got an election rush.
I think
is there
training that they should have someone outside of the post office to come in and oversee that particular mail, not just the managers in the post office. Someone outside of the post office should be there to make sure that during that time that mail gets where it's supposed to go and in a timely fashion. You can't depend on, that's the problem. You can't depend on the people that are working in government positions because oftentimes they're not quality. They have no standards. They don't care, and some of these people have taken an oath, and but Stickler talks about that in his book. You can't everybody can't be president. Some people shouldn't be president. Some people shouldn't be supervisors in the post office. There should be standards. Clarence Williams shouldn't be in his position. I mean, there has to be higher standards for these people. that's in office. That's my opinion.
All right, Robin and Beulah, and then we're going to move to question 2. Robin, did you want to speak?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to unmute. Just wanted to follow up to Patricia's point, like what Stiglitz said in the book, and to Patricia's point, not everyone is qualified to be in certain positions. And Stiglitz actually makes the point in the book that Trump, during the election cycle, made a lot of comments to sow distrust in a lot of our government checks and balances in our organizations and in our institutions. And then once he got in office, he put in people who deliberately wanted to destroy these, like they gutted the IRS. The person in charge of the IRS gutted the IRS. The person in charge of the post office doesn't actually believe in ensuring, like Patricia was saying, like that people just get their mail, that the post office is efficient and effective. And they did these things to gut these various institutions that we have, to basically create a self-fulfilling prophecy and quote unquote prove the point that he was trying to make by sowing the distrust in these institutions in the first place.
All goes back. I think someone mentioned trust last week, and just that slow chip away at the infrastructure. And then, oh, look, it's not working anymore. Let's just get rid of it. Thank you, Robin. Beulah.
I was just going to follow up that at one point in time, and I can remember this over years, that when we have April the 15th, they actually had people out on the curves taking people's their reports. And it went well. That they made it a happy thing. That the people out on the sidewalk from the post office was there taking people's paperwork and stuff they're mailing in. That kind of thing doesn't even happen anymore, but it should happen at the time that people are sending in their mail-in ballots, where that they should have that kind of if we were about democracy and the freedom of the people to run government, that they should have that kind of thing happen in election seasons. But it's not. It's almost like people they've come in and turned the lights off and everybody's gone home, or they're hiding in the dark. Or I don't know what we call it anymore. But I was just wanting to make that comparisons to because that's either they're taking your money because you owe money to the IRS, or people are excited that they're going to get back money because the IRS, they paid in too much money to the IRS. So, but it doesn't happen at election time.
Thank you, Beulah. Appreciate it. Let's move to question number 2. Peg, would you like to facilitate the discussion?
Sure. Okay, so our question number 2 is, when reimagining work, what specific workplace policies would you like to see implemented? For example, paid sick leave, increased paternity leave, shorter work weeks, etc. And should we think about specific policies to entice older people to remain in the workforce? Beulah has a hand up, Wes.
I was going to say that we need to have a siesta. we should be allowed to have a nap at a certain time of the day I'm just trying being facetious, but no, a period of break, and it should happen during the work hours, other than just your lunch hour, 30 minutes or an hour. It when you think about the .com folks, that they broke the mold and coming to work with suit and tie on, that they were more casual, more laid back. And I think that people are more productive whenever they have a better sense of comfort than having a boss who may be perceived as a tyrant and is, is leading by with a whip. And people not being afraid to express their creative juices in the workplace.
Thank you, Beulah. Annette?
The first thing that came to my mind is childcare. Workplaces need to provide childcare. As a person who is coming up on retirement and thinking about retirement, an accommodation that retirees, a suggestion I would have is to allow them to stay on a part-time basis. Because in my case, I don't know that I'm ready to completely retire but at the same time, and I see what needs to be done, and I would like to be able to do that. But I don't know that my agency would allow me to stay at a part-time basis. So those are two things I can think of. The nap sounds good too.
There is one large corporation in the US that does have nap time. They even have a nap room in their corporate facility.
There were some good
And
responses in the
Robin has her hand up, Wes.
Okay.
A lot of times it's unfortunate, but a lot of times, specifically with childcare, places of work that offer those types of benefits to their employees are the places where the employees generally need it the least. Low income workers generally need help with childcare, and their places of employment don't offer it. Large corporations that have high earning workers are generally places that have on-site childcare as a perk and benefits. And that happens a lot with kind of quote unquote perks and benefits to workplaces. And I definitely think that it's something that we should have, but I would like to see it applied more evenly across the board, as opposed to just giving perks to people who need it the least.
Right. I think if providing childcare as an option, as a perk at a workplace, is meant to kind of level the opportunity for quality workers, I think it has to be implemented in such a way as to give those people most in need the opportunity to take advantage of that, so that, like our quote for this week is, so that people can live up to their full potential. So thank you for sharing that, Robin. Does anyone else have? Oh, Jamal.
Yeah, just a quick one. When you mentioned childcare, I thought it was really interesting to tie back to what Mariana mentioned. We were talking about higher education, and she said what she found amazing was the fact that we have no support early on, for daycare and preschool and things like that. And she felt like that was something that we needed to work on here as an equalizer. Do the unions, has childcare been a focus of the unions? Like, does it come up in the auto workers stuff? I just don't know. Does anybody know if the unions push for that?
I haven't heard it per se, Jamal, one way or another of UAW. Nor have I heard it be mentioned in other larger scale newsworthy types of strikes. But I want to give Patricia an opportunity to respond and comment, and then we'll need to move forward from that. Patricia?
Okay, I was typing something. Unions, I got a couple of things on my mind. You mentioned the unions. The unions steer away from the child care issue. And they do it for a reason. Because we have so many isms. The women in the workforce, the men in the workforce, the men versus the women. People say, oh, the men, are they going to get, all of the benefits that come with childcare as well? Oh, they should. Oh no. It's a lot of sexism. It's a lot of sexism. It has a lot to do with that. There's the old school thinking of the man as the provider and that he brings the bread home. It still exists, but yet the fact remains that there are a lot of single head of household women that are taking care of their children without benefit of the man. So, I mean, it's a sticky issue, but we can work it out. It's not something that we can't work out. We just have to leave our prejudices to the side. Stop thinking about the man issue and the woman. That's old. It's a new day. People have to start thinking differently. And it was something else that the other lady mentioned, older people in the workforce. I mean,
Eula, right.
I retired this year, the beginning of this year. I can't even tell you how long I've been working, but I don't want to go back in the workforce. I'm tired. I want to do what I'm doing right now. And I think the push to get older people back in the workforce, or the mindset, is so that when you're working, you can't think about what's going on in the world. You can't form groups. You can't, try to get people to vote and think. They want us to work ourselves to death so that they can get away with doing whatever they want to do. It's time. There's a time to work and there's a time to retire from it all. I mean, I did it all, 32 years in the Postal Service. And then I worked for the police department in New York for several years before that. I'm done. I work, but I have my own business. I started my own company. So, and I do that at my leisure. I wanted to get involved with what was going on, try to help the country, because we're in big trouble. And it's important that people get out and vote. And I spoke to people today about the same issue. I spoke to, I'm involved in some other organizations and in this country, and there is going to be a movement. There is going to be a movement, but it's not the type of movement that you're thinking of. The next movement is going to be everybody. It's not going to be one ethnic group. It's not going to be men or women, because you got a lot of people are complaining about a lot of things. And I pray every night that we come together in this country, everybody, for the good of the country, because if we don't, we won't survive.
That's a great segue into our next question. So I'll go ahead and take that one, Wes. Stiglitz asserts that there are more similarities between urban, suburban, and rural voters across state lines. than amongst urban, suburban, and rural communities within the same state. Do you agree with this assertion? And if you agree, should the Democratic Party focus on targeting demographics based on geographic type as opposed to geographic location? And if you disagree, what are some potential commonalities across rural, urban, and suburban communities that can bring progressive coalitions together? Peg, you have a comment?
Sorry, I couldn't get to unmute. Thanks, Robin. I don't know if I have any distinct thoughts as it concerns similarities and differences, whether it's across state lines or whether it's within one state. But I think the bigger picture focus should be on just commonalities of people in general, because once we start thinking about state lines or within the state, then it just opens the door to a lot of additional problems, the least of which is gerrymandering, access to the polls, inequality within a district and all of that. So I think it's just very important to focus on commonalities of people in general and kind of not focus so much on state or in-state boundaries.
Thank you, Peg. We do have a question for some clarification in the chat. So I will say, kind of like as an example, I know for urban voters, public transportation may be a big issue because, for instance, in like New York, a lot of people don't have cars, so a public transportation infrastructure is something that's really important, and that might echo in large cities like Chicago and Baltimore and Detroit and things like that, where that may not be as important to rural voters, whereas rural voters may be more interested in things that relate to agriculture and farming specifically. But then potential commonalities may be making sure that we have library support and making sure we have Social Security, making sure we have Medicare, things like that. So hopefully that answers the clarification. So Mary, I don't think you've spoken yet tonight, so I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay. I just think that if you start going down the rabbit hole of distinguishing, urban to urban or suburban to suburban or urban to rural, which state am I in? I think that if you break it down to commonalities and values, what's important to me as a family, as an individual, as a community, as opposed to, a geographic location. I think everybody's going to be impacted by the incredible sudden rise in gas prices because of the Middle East war in between Israel, Hamas / Palestine / Iran / all the oil, OPEC countries they're all going to be sucked into this, and everybody's going to be impacted. So human values, one vote, one person, one vote, jobs with meaningful income that support families, that's going to take and disimpact this racial inequity, which also impacts gender inequality, and such the benefits, social safety network, and frankly speaking, a dysfunctional Congress, dysfunctional Supreme PACT court, is ruining our lives, and we need to focus on issues that bring us together and not divide us further.
Thank you, Mary. Monica, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like I don't have to say anything that, several people have said it so well. Mary just said it wonderfully. I'd just like to add that I was a little perplexed by that because, it's like giving in to this divide and conquer thing. And again, going to Mary's point that we should just focus on the commonality. Okay, I'm in New Jersey. I do care about public transportation, but do the people in Omaha not care about roads and getting from place to place? No, we share that we need to get from one place to the next, and we want it to work well and to be affordable and possible. I'd like to say it's very encouraging to hear all of these statements about commonality. It's really a bright spot there. That at least the people on this call feel that, okay, with little differences, but we all have these very common values, and we need to focus on that and bring that to bear on our dysfunctional government.
Thank you, Monica. Beulah, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
I was just going to say that we saw this happen yesterday or Friday, whenever they had elections of government for the governor of Louisiana. They only had about 30% of the Democrats vote in this election. And many of the people said they didn't even know there wasn't an election. So that is a commonality that seems to go across all parts of our state, whether it's rural or suburban or urban. And the sad thing about there in Louisiana is that they have a larger population of persons registered as Democrats than they do Republicans, but they only had about 30% of the Democrats vote in that election. And so it's a sad thing. So not empathy, but that seems to be, I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, not empathy, that all everybody doesn't have a sense of not caring. Is that the way I want to go? That people don't care, and then till whatever that they may be for or against hits them in the face, then it's too late. So that happens both in the rural sector as well in the urban sector.
Thank you.
People said, I don't care.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that people just say that I don't care, or they don't know. And we talked about this, I think before, that we need to bring civics back, and that we may have to do the civics classes ourselves in order to make sure that we have more people participating in the elections, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, Purple Party, whatever party they so choose, that they would. We need to bring that piece of education back into if it's not back into the classroom, it needs to be brought back to our communities.
Thank you, Beulah. So Mary, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and then after that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up because we're already at 9:30.
Okay, I'll make it brief. Just basically, it's extremely upsetting. I think people do care, and I think people are to the point where they're going to react, but like you said, too late. But it's not too late. We have to do a better job to reach all sectors, not just big cities. We need all sectors to participate. And there's no reason why we can't do this through Zoom, mass Zoom public education. And also, maybe it wasn't their fault. Maybe they did not publicize the election on purpose. This is part of the problem. This is the Republican strategy to screw up the Democratic turnout and the youth and people of color to make a difference, because they purposely are maneuvering and strategizing to sabotage what should be automatic. It should be federalized. It should be a process that's guaranteed and ensured and carried forth in safety and in a systematic manner, and not each state decide what they want, when they want it, how they want it, change the election, do this, don't tell people, hide the boxes, hide this, don't give them the ballots. I mean, there's all kinds of hundreds and hundreds of laws being passed at the local level that are interfering with a process that's one of the most important processes for a democracy to preserve.
Thank you, Mary. I will just say really quickly that regarding this question, it makes me think about what Annette said last week and how we need to think about how we are all interconnected, even though as someone who lives in a suburban area, I don't think much every day about farming. I'm still impacted by like how we get our food and how the things connect us. So what you said last week, Annette, I think is a great way for progressive alliances to show that what may seem like not an immediate issue to you still interconnects us all together and how we're all interwoven. And that needs to be how the Democratic Progressive Alliance focuses on connecting us all together. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Wes, to close us out.
Appreciate that. And yeah, Beulah, I agree. As Democrats, we have to start caring every year, not every 4 years, every year, especially with those local elections. That's how we build the bench and grow our party and our ideas. So appreciate that.